Hello everyone, welcome back to Croc Creek Brewery. Thank you again for joining me tonight. Tonight we have a winemaking tutorial, and if you follow my Facebook page, you will have had a sneak peek into what we're making tonight. If you don't follow me on Facebook, make sure you do. Go and look up Crockett Creek Homebrews on Facebook and you'll find me. You'll get a lot of sneak peeks into what we do in our winemaking, several sneak peeks into upcoming videos. You'll also get to see more of the racking and bottling process. I don't usually make videos on racking and bottling my wines because they're extremely repetitive. If you've seen any of my early videos, you know how to rack, you know how to bottle. I don't show a lot of those videos, but you'll see some of the post-rack results, and again, you'll get some sneak peeks into upcoming videos like you did tonight. This is what I showed everyone on Facebook. Tonight we're going to be making a traditional country wine that has a very rich history. I love the history of this wine, even though it's not as old as a lot of the recipes that I've made in the past. It's not 1,000 years old. It's not 500 years old. It could be. But let me reach for my book of recipes and I'll read to you a snippet of its history. In 1869, in England, there was a chemist who was told to make a wine from surplus ingredients in England. Some extra ingredients that would be extremely common for even the poorest of people in England in 1869. That chemist's name was Dr. Thudicum, and I apologize if I butchered that name. Dr. Thudicum, the chemist, made 5 different batches of this wine. And as he was perplexed as to what ingredient he would make a wine from, he wandered to the seaside, to the wharf in his part of England, and found that they were dumping large amounts of excess tea into the harbor. And so he decided to go and take some of that tea and make a wine from it. This would be a poor man's wine, a wine that anyone, no matter what their social status, could make. And so he went and made 5 different batches of this wine from 5 different types of tea. I'll name a couple off the top of my head. He made an oolong tea. He made a black tea. Off the top of my head, those are the only 2 I can remember. There are other types of traditional black English teas that he made. I believe it was a lot of the major groups of black tea. But when he presented his findings to the people who gave him this task, the tea was remarkable, or the wine was remarkable rather. And so tea wine became the poor man's tea in England in the late 1800s. I've heard of this wine before, even here in America. It was a wine that in my grandparents' era was very common. In the early 1900s, the late 1800s, was very common for people to make in their homes. Even though I had never, even in my home brewing, I had never really thought about making a tea wine, I suddenly began searching for it. And I found that a lot of fellow YouTubers, some that I follow quite steadily, have made a tea wine. And so I believe it's my turn to make tea wine. So now you know a little bit about the history from the notes of Dr. Thudicum in the mid to late 1800s. This is a wine that I have very high hopes for. What we're going to be using tonight is Earl Grey tea. A lot of the fellow YouTubers that I follow and whose recipes I use a black tea. I assume they're using something along the lines of an English breakfast tea. I can't be certain. I just know the name brands they use. I'm not using those tonight. I'm using something that's extremely common for me, which plays to part with the poor man's tea. This is something that I can find everywhere. Here in America, this is Twinings Earl Grey. And because this is a tea that has its roots in Victorian England, I'm using Earl Grey. This is an experiment. I have no idea how this wine is going to turn out. I've seen several people make this wine on YouTube. I have heard their reviews, heard their tasting notes. I have no idea how this is going to turn out, especially since I'm using an Earl Grey tea, which has bergamot oil in it. Now, I love bergamot oil. I love Earl Grey tea, its citrusy flavor, its unique flavor. It just seems like the ultimate English tea as far as I'm concerned. So let's get started with the actual tutorial. What we have right here is 1 gallon of water. I've measured it out. It is an actual 1 gallon. I have here 2.5 pounds of sugar. I've already put it in my carboy, and I think this may benefit us in the future to keep us from spilling a lot in our kitchen. I've gone ahead and placed the carboy and the funnel on a scale, zeroed it out, and added the amount of sugar I need to bring my brew up to my desired ABV, which in this case is 15% alcohol. If I was to add fruit or anything to this, I would need to calculate the specific gravity of that fruit juice, whether I'm adding raspberries or cranberries or blackberries or anything, any other fruit that could contain sugar. I would need to calculate the specific gravity of that fruit and subtract that from the sugar I need. But because this is just dried tea leaves, I don't think there's any sugar present in this at all. If there is, it's a minute amount, and I'm not concerned about that minute amount. So I went ahead and measured the full 2.5 pounds that I'm going to need, which will bring my specific gravity up to 15% alcohol. And you've seen this in a few of my videos, me pre-measuring my sugar to get a desired ABV. In case you are curious as you make these wines for yourself, 1 pound of sugar adds 0.035 points of specific gravity per gallon. So if I'm making a 1 gallon batch, I know that 1 pound of sugar is 1.034 in 1 gallon of water. So I just have to do the math, do a little calculations, and 2.5 pounds will bring me to a specific gravity of 1.115 in a gallon of water. That is 15% alcohol. That is 1.115 minus dry minus 1.000, which is what I suspect this wine will do. It'll go dry. 1.115 minus 1.000 times 135. Some people use 135. Some people use 131.25. I've seen a lot of people start using 135 in brews that are above 10% alcohol. So I've begun using it too. If you do that math, 1.115 minus 1.000 times 135, you will get 15%. So that's the math, a little math lesson there on how I get my calculations. I just do a little reverse math to get the amount of sugar I need, or if I'm making a mead, the amount of honey I need. But I'll save that for a future video. We're also going to be using 30 raisins. And the yeast we're going to be using is my old favorite, Lalvin K1V 1116. This is a champagne yeast. This is a high alcohol tolerance yeast. This yeast will go up to 18% ABV. I love dry wines. I'm not a sweet wine type of person. And so I use predominantly Lalvin K1V 1116 because I know as long as I don't exceed 18% ABV, it will be a dry wine. And so I've been making most of my wines in the last month or so, a little over a month, at 15% alcohol. Strict, across the board, 15%. I've been doing that because as I cellar and store my wines for 6 months and a year, I'll be able to taste the different flavors in the wine. And I know that the ABV is straight across the board. The ABV will not play any significant change in the taste of the wine. I want to taste the nuances in the wine. I want to taste the different flavors. I don't want the alcohol content to affect the flavors of the wine. And a wine that is 12 to 15% ages better and has less of a chance of attracting acetobacters, which will turn your wine to vinegar. So 15% right now is my lucky number. What we're going to do now is I have here 4 sachets, 4 tea bags of Earl Grey tea. We're going to take these and put them in our 1 gallon of water. This is cold water. This is not hot. This is room temperature water. We're going to put all 4 tea bags in here, and we're going to let it steep for 10 to 15 minutes. Now, if this was hot water, I would let it steep for about 5 minutes. But as this steeps, as this cold brews, if you would, it will imbue all of its flavor into the water. And after 15 minutes, we're going to take this water and add it to our carboy along with our raisins. This should be a very quick wine tutorial. As far as actually making it goes, subtract the time that I talk, because I have a tendency to talk quite a bit. This is going to sit and the tea is going to brew for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then we'll remove the tea bags. You can compost them or throw them away, discard them however you want. Then we'll carry on with our winemaking tutorial. I'm not going to bore you with watching me and watching the tea steep for 15 minutes. So I will see you in exactly 10 to 15 minutes. Okay everyone, so you can see right here we've had our Earl Grey tea steeping in cold to lukewarm water for about 10 to 15 minutes. It's been actually about 15 minutes. What we're going to do now is I want to swirl this around a little bit just to get some of that oil, some of the tea flavoring out of the tea bags We're not going to squeeze them in any way. What I'm going to do now is actually place them inside my funnel, just like that. And we're going to start pouring some of this cold steep tea into our carboy. We're going to pour about half of it in there, and then we're going to shake it and dissolve some of our sugar. So let's go ahead and try it. Okay, there you go. Spilled a little bit, but that's okay. So, we're going to put those tea bags back in here. We're going to use those again here in a second. Look at the color of our tea right now. A beautiful orange red color, but you can see all the sugar here at the bottom. We want all of that dissolved. So I'm going to put my palm here on top of the carboy, and we're going to shake it up. Now again, this is 2.5 pounds of sugar. That's quite a bit. So this may take a little bit of time to get all of this dissolved. And we want to go ahead and shake it roughly to get oxygen into our brew. That oxygen is important for the yeast to do their thing and turn the sugar into alcohol. Okay, we're going to let that sit for a minute and let that dissolve. It is currently a very muddy brown color, slightly foamy, but we'll see you here in a second and we'll see if it has any sediment at the bottom. Okay, so it's been maybe a minute or two. Our tea sugar mixture has already settled out quite a bit. There's a slight bit of sugar on the bottom. Let's go ahead and shake it up one more time, and then we're going to add the rest of our tea. There we go. Let's go ahead and add the rest of our tea. Let's put our tea bags back into the funnel. Now, before we add the rest of our tea, we're already up to about the 1 gallon label of our carboy. I want to go ahead and add our 30 raisins to it, and then we'll top it off if we need to. We're going to be adding 30 raisins tonight. Now the raisins add tannins to your wine. They add depth and complexity to the flavor of your wines. They also add a slight bit of nutrient to your wines. And I think they'll really benefit this Earl Grey tea wine. Again, I have really high hopes for this wine. I've seen quite a few people make it before. But this is again an experiment for me. I have no idea how this is going to turn out. But when it comes to making wines cheaply and out of commonly found ingredients, I'm all about that. And there we go. There's our 30 raisins added. Let's top this off just a little bit more. Not too much. I don't want to go all the way up to the handle of the carboy. I want to go a little bit above, right up to about the bottom of the neck of this carboy. Okay, I hesitated there. I almost got a little greedy. That's about as much as we're going to add. That's a little over 1 gallon of wine. You can see right here just how full it is. Not quite to the handle, a little above the 1 gallon label. Let's go ahead and shake this up one more time. Make sure we have all of our sugar, all of the tea mixed in, and then we'll add our yeast and take a hydrometer reading. Again, this should have a hydrometer reading of 1.115. That'll be 15% alcohol. It's quite a bit foamy, but I think we'll be okay. Let's go ahead and pitch our yeast. We have here half a packet of Lalvin K1V 1116. This is left over from my dandelion wine video. Let's go ahead and pour the rest of the packet in. There we go. Let's stir this in. Again, I'm dry hopping my yeast. So we're going to have to make sure we don't have any clumps of yeast in our must. This will also make sure we have everything nice and mixed together. So right now, all we have is a good, strong Texas sweet tea. But here in a few weeks, we'll have tea wine. Okay, so we have a few clumps of yeast in there. I'm not that worried about it. It'll be fine. Let's go ahead and get our hydrometer. We have here our hydrometer, our graduated cylinder, and our turkey baster. Let's get a measurement on. Okay, try not to make a mess. That goes back in our sanitizer. All right, so let's give this a quick spin, little dip, to make sure there's no bubbles or foam hanging on to it. We are actually at a reading of 1.110. 1110, which is 0.005 points away from our target gravity. That's perfectly acceptable by me. So we're going to go along with that. That should be about 14 3/4, almost 15. If we use our measurements of our original gravity minus our final gravity times 131.25, we end up with about 15 and a half, a little less than 15 and a half. So this may actually ferment out to a full 15%. What we're going to do now is pour this back in, because everything is sanitized and clean. These are going to go back in our sanitizing liquid. What I'm going to do now is add our airlock. Sorry about that. Somebody's trying to call me. I'm busy. We're going to clean out the spot where our airlock and bung are going to go. Here's our airlock full of sanitizer liquid. And there we go. We're reading negative pressure. We have a good seal. So I'm going to add a label to this with what it is, its date, its original gravity of 1.110, and we're probably going to check on it in about 2 to 3 weeks and see how it's doing. So thank you for joining me for this very unique old country wine tutorial, and I hope to see you on the next video. We'll see you next time here at Croc Creek Brewery. Bye now.